Welcome. Thank you, everyone, for coming to today's xTalk. I'm Jovi Nazarino. I am a learning science and education outreach specialist with the residential education team in Open Learning. Our team also has a Canvas Innovation Fund happening. So this fund is for MIT faculty and instructors. We're currently accepting applications. This is for folks looking to improve your subjects on Canvas. Again, my team, residential education, open learning, we collaborated, for example, with Annabelle over last summer. So in addition to learning about her awesome course today, you'll get to maybe get an idea, an example of what this fund could help you do. Basically, we hired MIT undergrad students, ideally someone who's a former student of yours or an undergrad TA. We support, train, guide them to help implement what you're hoping to improve. We are going to kind of move things on to our actual talk for today. Happy to say today's xTalk is called Hack Yourself, an interdisciplinary course using Canvas, and it is my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker today, who is Annabelle. Annabelle is a senior lecturer in EECS, as well as MITx digital learning scientist with the DLL. So she's here today to share about her course, which is actually called Hack Yourself, Data-Driven Wellbeing and Learning. And she will also share how her course team uses Canvas and Canvas structures and how that has impacted the course experience. So all that being said, thank you, Anna, for being here to talk today, and I'll hand things off to you.
So thank you for the introduction. So yeah, I actually generally have been teaching ECS classes, the Intro Computer Science class, for the past 11 years. But as of 2 semesters ago, I started teaching this class called Hack Yourself, aimed at first-year students, but we've had students from all years taking it as a seminar. So in this talk, I'm basically going to go over 3 main topics, 3 ideas. So the first is just an overview of our course. The course is an introduction to positive psychology and data science, all in the context of student well-being and best practices of learning. Then I'll do a little description of how we set up our Canvas course, keeping in mind that this course is highly interdisciplinary. And then lastly, we'll just do I'll go over some comments about the experience, both from the instructor point of view and the student's point of view. Okay, so first let's start with the course overview. So our course is centered around really just empowering students to take control of their learning. That is our major goal for running this class. Because best practices of learning often go hand in hand with having positive well-being, students are introduced to positive psychology in order to foster these really basic skills that make them more receptive to best learning practices. So the well-being of a class, the well-being portion of the class really focuses on the student as a self. So some things that they can do for themselves. Some topics here are growth mindset, optimism, strengths, and resilience. Those are kind of the big ones. They read papers on these topics and discuss research on effective strategies and effective learning skills. Okay, so that kind of leads into the idea of them looking at best practices of learning. So with some of the papers that they read on well-being, they also read some papers on best practices of learning as well. So some topics here are the ideas of spaced and interleaved learning, active learning, the forgetting curve, and the idea of getting into a flow state or a flow zone to have deep engagement and focus. So those are some of the topics for the best practices of learning side. And as this is an MIT course, all of these are done in the context of playing around with data. So this is in addition to just reading peer-reviewed papers, we have students engage with actual data sets themselves. And about half of the data sets that students actually play around with are from MIT classes. For now, just one class, which is the classes that I teach. But hopefully, we're working on getting some data from some of the other intro classes, the GIRs, because they've done a lot of experiments on these best practices as well. So a couple of examples of data sets that students play around with are video watching data sets, where students kind of see the habits or the patterns of students watching videos from my class before class time, and whether that has an effect on the grade. They I also make available to them data sets on the course evaluations. So the courses that I have run in lecture-based format for a couple semesters, just, as we lecture-based as we know it. And then it's also run in active learning and flipped classroom style for a couple semesters. So students take the evaluations, so the student evaluations, the course evaluations at the end of semester, and kind of compare to see if there's any significant results from, these two different runs of the course. And then students, just as a final example, they also use generative AI to build a classifier for optimistic versus pessimistic statements. So they learn sort of how to prompt the Gen AI, how to set up the definition of optimism, give some examples, and then they're just given a bunch of I think maybe 50 optimistic and pessimistic statements, and they see how well their classifier does at actually classifying them as optimistic or pessimistic. So that's kind of a fun exercise. Okay, so the word cloud is for your entertainment only. It's kind of the just the big buzzwords from our course as I talk about the structure. So like other classes, we have things that students do in class when they come to class, and then we have things that students do out of class when they're not in class. So for the in-class sessions, we do have like a lecture style. So the instructor just kind of talks about whatever topic is for that particular class. But it's very interspersed with giving students opportunities to ask questions and discuss, think, pair, share. So there's a lot of opportunity for just interrupting the lecture itself. So our class sessions are not lectures. So that's, kind of pretty standard for a discussion style class. And then we have the idea of out-of-class learning. Out-of-class learning. Notice we do not call it homework because just because the students aren't in class doesn't mean they stop the learning. So everything that they do at home we call out-of-class learning. And this involves a whole bunch of activities because, our course does have sort of these three components: the idea of well-being topics, the idea of best learning practices topics, and data science, right? We have these three sort of things that we talk about. And the sort of assignments or the things that they should do at home are very different depending on which one of those three topics it's for. So they do things like interventions on themselves. So they take a topic that they've learned from class, and they they do a little we call it an intervention. I'll give an example. So for example, at the end of the first class, we talk about strengths, and they do a survey where they answer 190 something questions, and the survey then basically tells them their strengths sort of ranked, and we have students tell us what their top 5 strengths are, so that the next class we give everyone a name tag with their top 5 strengths on them, so that in the next class we are basically, you're able to know what your peers' names are as well as what their strengths are, just to kind of connect with them a little bit more. So that's a nice intervention we have them do. Another one is related to creating or setting up a habit that they might want to create, or maybe some habit they want to break. But in it, we have them be very specific in sort of saying what cue would sort of trigger some action, which then would trigger some sort of reward for you. So very, very specific cue, action, reward type statements that they can take in order to, sort of take the very first step into creating some larger positive habit. So that's another example of an intervention that they might do at home. And then another example is we had them estimate their screen time, like on their phone. And then we had them actually for an entire week record on their phone how long they actually spend on their screens. And this was related to the idea of systematic bias in data. And so, everyone basically underestimated how long they spent on their phones. And it was a great discussion about systematic bias and how the data can still be useful, even if it's wrong. So those are the kinds of things that we do out of class, along with the standard reading of papers and having them just work a little bit with the data sets that they see in class, just having them generate new visualizations on about that data just with generative AI. So everything, like I said, we do is sort of with the goal to help students best learn. And to that end, we are very much in a partnership with our students. And psychological safety is a really, really big factor in having students participate in class. So like I mentioned, one of the things we do is we wear name tags with our top 5 strengths on them. Even instructors do as well. All of our policies are transparent, flexible, and most importantly, justified in our syllabus. We promote growth mindset, so students are encouraged to reflect at the end of class with what they've learned. So for example, the 3 questions we ask them and we have them hand in at the end of every class is what resonated with you, what didn't resonate with you, and besides those 2 things, what's one other thing that you've learned? So all of these little simple things that we do kind of work together with what we actually teach. And, the exercise at the end of class where they say what resonated, what didn't, that's sort of a very simple thing that they can do to help combat the forgetting curve, for example, and the name tags as well, right? They're just in the spirit of enabling psychological safety and having students be very comfortable in making mistakes and having just asking questions in class. Okay. All right, so that's basically the course. And as you can tell, we have a lot going on in our course, right? Again, 3 major topics that we kind of interweave together. The idea of well-being, which is just about the student self. The idea of best practices of learning, which is the idea of the student and work or tasks. And then we also integrate that with the data science portion where they look at actual data sets that they might find interesting related to their classes. So these 3 fields, right, we have to all weave together into each class. And each of these pieces has a different assignment type that best fits it, right? So we're aware of this. We were aware of this from the start when we first designed this course. So we knew that the website or whatever was the landing place for students for this course absolutely had to be simple, right? So main point here is navigating the website should not be an extra chore for the students to do. That should be as simple as possible. And we have, again, many different assignment types, and I'll go over them in a little bit, but right, many topics, many assignment types, all of them are interconnected. So the website simplicity was top of mind for us. Our other philosophies as we were thinking about the course website was we wanted to be very, again, simple and clear in the spirit of transparency with our students, spelling out our policies in the syllabus. So the syllabus itself is like almost 6,000 words, a word long document, like its own CI course itself. And then the last thing is, I've already mentioned this, we don't call things homework. The learning never stops. It's just either being done in class or out of class. But we still wanted to make this distinction clear in our course website as the students navigated it. So this says demo, and I have these, and I have some slides just in case, things went wrong with internet, but I was just going to do a really quick show of the website itself, and then I'll just do some pictures of the rest of it. So this is just our main landing page for the website. There are a bunch of links on here on the left-hand side as usual, but really this is the only page that students ever need whenever they come to the website. So you can see it feels very tight, which I like, by the way, as in there's no wasted white space, right? As seems to be the trend these days. It's very visually clear, the denomination between what is the sort of in-class piece and then what students need to do between the weeks, right? Since we don't call things homework, it's just stuff they do between weeks 1 and 2, for example. That's the landing page. And then the syllabus is the sort of this document, which is obviously, syllabi. It's just a bunch of our very transparent policies, just all justified sort of, about, why we do things the way that we do them and things like that. So, yeah, so that's our, I mean, it's very simple, just like our website, but sort of in the spirit of yeah. Okay, so yeah, just like I mentioned, this is the landing page, very clear what the students need to do. I'll just go over some the way the in-class session pages look like, and then the way out of class, and then some of the out of class learning tasks that students do. So for the in-class sessions, for example, this is week 2, so this would be February 14th, the second blue line from like the middle blue line, right in this calendar look here. So students for the in-class session, right, they're only one click away from that main web page to getting to where they need to be. And so this is a particular week on motivation and strengths. We very clearly outline all the class outcomes that we want them to come away with. And we also have these idea of intentions here, which I'll talk about in just a little bit. Give me a couple seconds. And then links to whatever they need. So this would be code for the data science portion that we would talk about, or the PowerPoint slides for the well-being or learning, or maybe data science portion that we talk about as well. Let me hop back to the intentions here. So the intentions, I have something for show and tell. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing really quickly. So the intention cards here, the students collect. They're like Pokemon cards that they get for each class that they attend. And this also encourages attendance, so not miss classes. So this is the sort of the, I guess, like title card. But basically the intentions are really tangible cue action cards that students collect. And they're related to the particular class. In each class, there's about 5 or so that we hand out. And they're really specific things that students can do to form healthy habits related to well-being or learning. And students get this cute little binder when they come to class, and they get the cards. So here's an example of a card that they might get. So this one's called Tame the Brain. And the specific cue is you have an intrusive thought about an unfinished task. We all have those right before we go to bed. And the action is write it down to help your brain to let it go, right? So at first, students might flip through some of these cues and actions, right, to kind of remember what the action should be for a particular cue. But the hope is that, once they've done these enough, then it just becomes kind of a habit. That's something you do. And then some of these cues and actions kind of stack on top of each other to form a larger, better habit. Anyway, yeah. And so there's some on well-being, some on learning. There's one on test yourself. So the idea that testing is a memory formation technique. This particular card says, hey, the cue is that you're studying, and then the action is you want to allocate about 60% of the time to testing. So not just study, it's the testing that actually helps retain the information. So that goes hand in hand with some, and so we have some other ones that are more related to testing. Anyway, so those cards are what they get, and again, they also help get students to come into class. Is if they don't come to the class, then they don't get these cards retroactively. Okay, so that's how the blue in-class sessions or in class session pages look. And then again, as I mentioned, we have a lot of interweaving going on in the well-being, learning, and data science portions of this class. And we don't really have any major assignments that students do. It's all sort of little tasks that we have them do, as you can see here from the between weeks pieces. So it was very important for us to make it clear to the students exactly how many and what needed to be done between the weeks, just because there were so many little things that needed to be done. And so having them all on one page was really nice for the students because they just, again, they're one click away from finishing that particular task. And so they just go one at a time, boom, 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 and then they're done with that, they can tell how far they've come. So here are some examples of things that they might do. For the data science portion, they usually are asked to go back to the data set that we looked at in class and come up with new visualizations with the help of generative AI. And they're asked to sort of critically think about the AI prompting that they do and the responses that they get back from AI. And this is really nice. I think the students like this a lot because it does generate a lot of discussion in the discussion post. So this, all the students post publicly the results that they've come back with from generating these visualizations with the help of GenAI, and other students usually, they all have different visualizations that come out of it, which is pretty cool. And rarely do they come out with the same visualization, and then you see this cute little discussion between the students. They're like, oh, we prompted it the same way. So discussions are really nice way for us to have students just post about the data science portion. A lot of preparing for next class is in between those weeks. So we have students read papers on what they, on the sort of, just to prepare them for the next class's topics. And so to do that, we used Perusall, which is embedded in Canvas. It was really nice. We uploaded all of the articles we wanted students to read. And we have students make, I think, something like at least two comments on each paper or something like that. And so students basically just highlight a particular section or word or paragraph, whatever, and then they can comment about it on the Perusall integration. And in this particular case, it prompted another student to reply to the original comment, which is actually really nice for getting students to know each other and generate some nice discussion as well. From an instructor's point of view, the Perusall is really nice as well because it did a really good job aggregating all the comments. So at a quick glance, I didn't have to go through each article and each page and see where people commented. I could just see this nice overview of who's commented for how long, and this nice little upvote system here. Perusall does also bring up some questionable actions by students, which for now, all I noticed is that if a student sort of writes up their response like in a separate text file and pastes it in, it's always flagged, which is a little bit annoying from my point of view. I wasn't sure how to turn this off, but I just kind of ignore it now. I'm pretty sure the students have good intentions here, but this was also nice to see that they flag potential things like this. And so these are the two sort of interesting assignment, I guess, types that we use in our course: the Perusall as a way to talk about papers, and just the discussions as a way to talk about data science and with visualizations. And of course, the students also have some very brief writing assignments where they, for example, they tell us they do a quick write-up on a time that they felt they were at their best self in the past week, for example, just to generate positive emotions. And that, of course, is not a discussion. It's private to the instructor, and that's just a standard assignment in Canvas. yeah, so didn't feel the need to go over that one. Okay, last piece is just some comments about things that we've noticed from my point of view and from students' point of view. So the way that I've never used Canvas before, I will say this. The only thing I've used it before was for making announcements because it maintains sort of the student list. And I've used it for getting up-to-date registration information because Canvas, between that dead week of like Reg Week, where students are signing up for courses, but WebSys is not actually updated. Canvas actually does update with students as they sign up for the course, which is awesome, like as they submit their forms. So that was really good for us to say, you know what, it's, the day after Reg Day and we have only 2 students signed up for this course. We should probably make a push for advertising some more. So we kind of used Canvas for that, which was kind of awesome. The way that we actually developed the course was, as Jovi mentioned, through this Canvas Innovation Fund. It was an amazing experience from the instructor's point of view. So they took care of hiring the student. So all I had to do was sort of identify a student who could help us build the website. And kind of be like a mentor for the instructors as to what students like and don't like about Canvas, other Canvas courses. So all we did was hire or identify the student, but the group from the Canvas Innovation Fund took care of the actual hiring details. They took care of having weekly meetings with the student. So all the instructors had to do was have an initial meeting where we just kind of outlined what the course is and what we want out of it, a halfway point meeting where we saw if things were on track or not and where we might have to pivot, and then a final handoff meeting. And so it was really great from the instructor's point of view to have a lot of the details be hands off for us, but know that they were in good hands and things would be on track. From the students' opinion, it was very eye-opening for them to be on the sort of teaching side or setup side for courses, and they got to experience the behind the scenes of Canvas, which I think was valuable for them. So now, as the course was running, let me do a quick impressions from the instructor's point of view. So I generally run really big classes, like 100 and up students. So we had in the seminar a small class size, like 6 to 12 students, and the Canvas was really nice to be able to have very detailed information about when students hand in work. Like Canvas sends you an email as soon as a student hands in a particular work, which was nice. I enjoyed that. The notifications obviously are customizable. It was very manageable, especially for this small class size, to be very hands-on with students who were not participating, who were not handing in work. It was really easy to be on top of them so that they don't fall behind. I will say I did try to use Canvas for a large class size, and it was just kind of slow. But this was a very enjoyable experience with Canvas. And there are 3 instructors for this course. I am just one of them. And collaboration to add content between the 3 of us was very, very seamless in Canvas. If somebody else was working on the same page I was and they updated it, I got a little notification that says, hey, this page has been updated, which was nice. And then there's other things like when you create pages, they're kind of, behind the scenes. Canvas knows that there's now this page. And so when you link it, like from our main website, you just have to pick from the list of all the pages that have been created in Canvas what you want to link to. So that's really awesome. I don't have to remember URLs or anything like that. From the students' point of view, so I surveyed all the students, every single one of them, I asked them what did they like, what they don't like about our website. Every single one of them said they loved the homepage. The simple layout is just nicely tucked together. It's very simple. It's color coded, visually appealing. You can easily tell what work needs to be done. They love that. All of them. Some of them also said that they love the calendar. from Canvas, because a lot of their classes are on Canvas, especially the freshmen. They love that they can rely on the calendar to basically say, hey, on this day you have to get this and this and this and this done. And so those are the two big things that they liked about Canvas. What they did not like about it was, I guess, Perusall. Sorry, I wasn't sure what really they meant by this, but I guess so we had a requirement that they should submit at least 2 comments for our papers, but students had no way to check off that that was actually done. So it kind of permanently remained undone. Like there wasn't, yeah. So that's consistently, I think at least half the students said that this is something they did not like about the course. And one student actually said that they disliked our color scheme for our homepage, which, I mean, they're not wrong. It's, what is it? It's teal and whatever this color is, peach and blue. So we can easily fix, no problem. But yeah, just okay, great. So finally, the current is basically what I talked about now. That's what the course is. That's the content that we have in the course. For the future, I want to put a little bit more giving opportunities for students to play with generative AI and visualizations, more so than just generate this visualization and talk about it. I want to try to have them sort of think about the larger data science pipeline and potentially work with a group to go through the whole process of getting data, something that they might be interested in, playing around with it, exploring it, generating some visualizations, and potentially create something that they will then present to try to persuade their peers of some result, like like coming up with their own result as a sort of a research, a research result, and having them do a presentation on that. I think that might be pretty fun. The other thing we want to do is, again, related to the data science portion. Often students ask very good questions in in-class sessions. And it's just as we discuss, things sort of just get triggered in their minds. And they're like, well, what about, like, what if this and what is this? So as an example, when we were doing estimating the screen time for systematic bias, right? So they estimate the screen time and then they record the actual screen time. One student asked, well, is it the case that bad habits are underestimated and good habits are overestimated? Like, for example, estimating screen, like, being on your screen is considered bad, so you tend to underestimate that. But if you were to estimate how many steps you walk, right? Walking is good, would you tend to overestimate that? And every time students come up with such a question, we say, that is a very good question and something that we could propose as a research proposal. And so we would love to have students actually just write up such research proposals. Obviously, they don't have to implement the experiment. They don't have to get the data, but it's nice to just imagine if you can just, do anything, right? Propose any such thing to study, and then they just do a little write-up. They think about how would they get the data, what experiments they would do, who their population might be, and then how might they analyze the data, what kind of graphs would they show, things like that. So that would be amazing, and that is something we'll integrate in our next run of the class. And then finally, these topics are kind of universal. The idea of having students, sort of have positive well-being and have them be interested in, learning well. This is something that we want all our students to have. And I'm wondering if, some of these other classes could make very small changes that kind of stack together and have a larger positive impact on students. So even something as simple as having students reflect at the end of class with a very simple question, right? That would encourage them to think about the topics that they've just learned to combat the forgetting curve. Or again, things like, in their syllabus, not just outright writing down some policies, but trying to justify them with a quick little blurb about research shows, blah, blah, blah. Like these little changes that could help have students at least stop and think, like maybe I should attend class, or maybe I could participate more, things like that. Anyway, so that's the plan. And that's all I have. So I wanted to thank the other co-instructors for this course. Open Learning, Erin and Lauren, who helped us with the Canvas Innovation Fund, yay. And Melly was our student. She did an amazing job helping us consider what students like from and what students want from Canvas courses and how to make our course really simple. Andreas Karatsalis from HAS was very helpful in having us think about some of the writing assignments, and Rachel Searcher from Teaching and Learning Lab as well. It was a great consult. So thank you.
I do want to open up for questions, so we'll just kick us off with one. I just want to say the weaving together of like the application of positive psychology with the data science within a context that's more like experiential, like students are experiencing and seeing the outcomes of some of the related to the data itself, and having to like grapple with like the counterintuitive findings sometimes that, like, you could easily tell someone to do, go and do more self-testing as opposed to, only reading, but that will have less effect than if they understand and come to some realization on their own on why that's important. So just really, really awesome talking about for all those reasons. Anyway,
thank you. Yeah,
but
and
it makes
it's all data, and half of it is data from courses that students have taken, which is fun, I think.
Yeah, so that must be like especially fascinating. Yeah,
Yeah.
very, very cool. All that to say leads me to my question of like, it makes me very curious on the journey that brought you and your co-instructors to like even come up with this course in the first place. Like, what were the things that made you want to actually put this together and put it out there?
Yeah, so I had originally, so I didn't know I was doing this. Okay, so before I actually started, I don't know the positive psychology part of it that well, but I have learned throughout these past two course runs from Karner Jernigan, who is the person who knows the positive psychology. So the way I came up with this idea is through this positive or this psychology idea called mind wandering, which I didn't know I was doing at the time, but we all do it. It's when you do a task that's just something you've done many times, fold laundry, shower, whatever, like, those things. It's just when the best ideas, when you're at your most creative self, that's when things come into play. And so I had just kind of had this thought as I was mind wandering one day. It was, I don't know of any courses that sort of helps students learn best, or that justifies how students learn best. There are some courses at MIT that are from the instructor's point of view, which have sort of best practices of teaching, but there isn't anything that's best practices of learning. And a lot of students actually do these best practices of learning through their classes, like Teal, right? They do active learning in a bunch of classes, but it's never really justified, or there isn't a course on it. And so I talked with Paola Robusco, and she had remembered that Carter Jernigan had run a seminar a long time ago on well-being. And we actually realized that you can tell students all you want about these best practices of learning, but if they're not in a state to receive them, then it's not going to stick. So that is, if they don't have sort of a good state of well-being, right, they won't be as receptive to trying these, or to trying these best practices of learning. So that's when we kind of pivoted and said, well, we should probably try to have students focus on the ideas of strengths, optimism, growth mindset, right? All of these positive psychology ideas as as something that comes before learning. And once you have those positive psychology ideas, then you're more likely to, come up with goals and actually stick to them, or come up with these habits and actually stick to them. So that's how it came into play. And the data science portion was just, I know data science, so that's what I could bring to this course. But yeah, and I always wanted to play around with data from my courses, and I thought students might as well too.
Yeah, thank you. There's a couple of questions in the chat, but one was about have you thought about other ways maybe you can trace students after taking the course? That reminded me of your comment earlier of like maybe students can propose research, or like maybe there'll be students to come out of this who really want to like follow up with this in the future. Anyway, curious on your thoughts on, what else, how else we can know how students are continuing to like apply these takeaways down the line. Obviously it's kind of outside the context of your course, but a good question.
Yeah, I think so I forget exactly, there's a new index to kind of rank schools. Gallup something. I forget exactly what, but it's basically a survey of people who graduated universities. And I think they said something about a lot of sort of the highly ranked universities didn't really prepare them on these topics very well. Like it prepared them academically, but in terms of having it didn't really prepare them in the sense of like they felt like they had growth mindset attitudes, or they didn't feel like they were very optimistic, or they didn't feel like they could work well in a team. Like those kind of, I guess, softer skills. Right? It didn't feel like the institutions really prepared them for that. And I think that's something that we could potentially survey students who have taken this course, to see if, okay, you've taken this course, right? And then the next semester we could ask them, is there a habit that you have stuck with since taking this course? Or do you feel like, you know, you continue to get enough sleep, or not get enough sleep? Like, is there anything that you've kind of switched? Have you even looked at your book, right? Since since the course has ended, right? Like these kinds of things we can ask and just kind of survey the students semester by semester and see whether it's actually made an impact. Yeah, so I looked at the modules, and two things. It felt like they were many clicks away. Like it was to do the between the weeks pieces, it felt like it would be like 2 clicks away from the students actually getting to the assignment they needed to get to. And the modules themselves, they're very spaced out. Like there's a lot of scrolling that needs to be done to go from the first module to the second. There's just a lot of empty space around those modules. And we wanted, again, to have a very compact, students can easily get an overview of what week we're at with very minimal scrolling. Really, the less scrolling, the better was kind of our criteria here, just to make it very, very simple. Yes, great question. Yeah, that's part of our policies. Again, just in the spirit of students' well-being, right? We shouldn't have them spend 10 hours on a class that's worth 6, right? And so that's in our policies, clearly spelled out. So it just says, as you're working in your out of class learning, if you hit the 6 classes, 2 hours. So if you spend more than 4 hours on the out of class, just stop. And so students like it. Actually, twice now, I think, a student was just in the middle of writing their personal introductions. So telling us at a point in the past week where they were at their best self, and writing. And then at some point it just says, I've reached my hour limit. I spent too long on this. I'm going to stop now. So, so I think that's great. It achieves what we wanted to achieve. And it also shows that the students read the syllabus, which many students don't. So I think it's great. But yeah, again, it's just a policy that we have that's in line with what we teach. So it's, being well, and you shouldn't spend time on things if they're not if they shouldn't be worth that much. And if you do, then it's on us if we made it that long. Regarding what they should spend time on, I think maybe if it's a repeat, like if a student is consistently running up against the clock, then maybe we could have a conversation on what they're spending time on. But so far it's just happened wants to choose separate students, so it's not a problem. And our activities vary. Like some are surveys that they take, some are, sort of stories about themselves. Some are, as you can see, just playing around with GenAI. So it's like completely different things that they do. They should start with what they like most, I guess. It's fine with me, or they can start with something that they know will take an exact time, like a survey, you know how long that could take, right? And then move into the things that are maybe some students just, I don't know, maybe have a hard time starting to write essays or things like that. And so they could just leave that to the end, and just whatever they get done it is what it is. So yeah. Okay, it's been a year, so I'm trying to remember what advice she gave us. I'm pretty sure we took every advice she gave us. The thing that stood out to me the most was actually as a first year, so she was a first year student, she took my class. She said that the students use the calendar a lot. And personally, I would not have thought that because I would set up my own Google Calendar where I would just put the dates from each class personally, and I wouldn't rely on an external thing. But she said that she and all of the people she knows actually rely on that Canvas calendar quite heavily. So I was like, okay, we'll keep that in because I wanted to just kind of to trim down all the stuff that we had on our course. I wanted to remove a bunch of stuff, but she said to keep it. And I'm glad we did because a lot of the students from our class actually liked that we have it in there. And we have our due dates sync up with the calendar. For thinking about CIF, I would say do it. It's a very positive experience from an instructor's point of view. I cannot stress this enough. Just do it. The hardest part will just be selecting a student. And the student is, hopefully you select the right one and they'll be very motivated to work on the project. In terms of selecting the student, yeah, we were kind of limited by whoever was around for the summer. And so we had I think a batch of three, ended up with three potential candidates who actually were around for the summer. And then we just picked her. But yeah, I think, yeah, she was a first year student as well. So I think trying for first year students might be better because they don't have other internships potentially, and they do, and this is a really nice step in the right direction for them to just do some work, get behind the scenes, look at creating a course, and especially if they're interested in education, it's a great start.